Okay, so we are going to first bring up Stephanie Ardrey. Stephanie is going to tell you a little bit about herself in her presentation. So I'm not even going to go any further except to say, welcome Stephanie Ardrey.
Thank you everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to come and speak to you tonight. Before I get started, I'd just like to know a little bit about you all. So if you can tell me, we don't have to do individually, but how many of you are already in your business by show of hand? Okay, those of you that are in business, how long have you been in business?
In my business that I'm here for, or in general?
In the business that you're here for, I guess.
I'd say since November of last year.
Okay, so under a year. Anyone longer than that in business? Yes. How long?
Well, my business I'm here for is a subsidiary of my current business, which has existed for 7 years.
7 years, okay.
I have my current business for 3 years, but I have an LLC that umbrella this current business for 7.
Okay, so about 7 years. And then the rest of you that didn't raise your hand in terms of being in business already, when are you planning or hoping to launch your business? In the next year, next 2 years? What's the timeline?
Kind of like next 2 years.
Next 2 years? Anyone else?
Next month.
Next month, okay, fantastic. And then just give me a little bit in terms of the industries. What industries are you participating in? Yes.
I launched, I believe, in April, and I haven't sold anything. What my industry is, I have 3 products, event planning, creating business plans, and virtual assistant.
Okay, so services, fantastic, wonderful. Anyone else? I know we have home health or mental care. Anyone else? What's your industry?
Short-term rentals, or vacation rentals.
Vacation rentals, okay, so real estate. Okay, all right. Any industry that we didn't touch on that's unique that we should know about? Yes.
Mine is food, because it's tea, and I also have a nonprofit.
Okay. Okay, yes.
I have a membership-based service that provides artist management for independent artists.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. Well, thank you all. Yes, yes.
Ours is water, selling water, different alkaline or cayenne.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all. It sort of helps to give a little bit of an idea. As Dion said, my name is Stephanie Ardrey, and I've been in business for a little over 3 decades. So funny sometimes when you say this, like, oh my gosh, you feel like you've been doing this for forever. But I have. I had the opportunity of starting my first company right out of high school, actually. And I was trying to get a part-time job and found that I was overqualified for the part-time jobs that were being offered. So as a full-time college student, my last option was to go ahead and start a business. And so I landed a contract with the California State Library Association, where I helped to set up the initial office of Second Start Adult Literacy Program. And that program was meant to help adults who had gone through their lives as illiterate. And so there was a lot to creating this program, and I did that while in college, added some additional contracts to that, and then went on and segued into here I am to you today. I created an advertising agency that I like to say in the Bay Area, we start everything in our parents' garage. So I started an advertising agency in my mother's garage that then I parlayed through joint venture to a $250 million company. That was just something little that I did while I was 20-something. And then I retired at 30-something and realized that I was too young at 30-something to be retired, so I better figure out what my next thing was going to be. And so the last 20 years I spent in the commercial real estate, finance, and development sector. But along this journey, I have been actively involved with training and speaking to entrepreneurs. I got the pleasure of being part of what was considered a youth incubator when I was 21, and that was a great experience because much like this training, I had an opportunity to go through and work on the business plans with a lot of professionals, but then be able to parlay that into business relationships. So for my advertising experience, if any of you remember this campaign, Secret, Strong Enough for a Woman but Made for a Man, that was created by Carol Williams. I had an opportunity to work with Carol Williams. And then when I had my agency, her executive vice president came and worked for me. So, you never know, huh? I think I say I have that history of I've had more mentors come and join my companies later, so maybe there's something to that. Our topic today is one that's very close to my heart. And I'll tell you a little funny story to lighten up the topic, because I know you think money, finance, that can be heavy. But I want you to take 1 second and imagine this. Imagine you're at home on the weekend, you're doing whatever you like to do, and maybe you have a child, and you walk into that kid's bedroom, and you discover that that kid has been spending the afternoon making fake credit cards. What would you do?
Get the belt.
Get the belt. Well, I'll tell you, my mother, when she walked in on me making those fake credit cards, she paused. She thought, oh my goodness, what next? Will I be looking at counterfeited money next? You know, like, kid, you've got some splaining to do. Why are you making credit cards? And why would you spend hours perfecting these fake credit cards? Well, it was because at 9 years old, I had been playing business since I was at least 5 or 6. I had the Monopoly money. I had a new 10 key before I knew what that meant. My dolls were my customers. I was gonna have this most successful business, and I discovered that other stores offered credit, and my business needed to offer credit as well. So I went about creating credit. So trust me that on this topic about building credit, you are in good hands, okay? All right, so we're gonna talk about business credit. So what is this? What is business credit? What's the difference between business credit and any other credit? Thoughts? Anyone? Yes.
Well, business credit pertains to your business, whereas personal credit is personal. Like,
But if you go to Chase and you open up a DBA, they will print you out a card with your business name on it. They will offer you a credit card with your business name on it. Is that business credit? Uh-oh, who said that?
it depends on.
So why isn't that business credit?
Because it's based off your personal credit history.
Bing, bing, bing. Yes, absolutely. So in most instances, what happens absolutely is we go to our neighborhood lender, our bank, which is where most people go initially when they're starting a business. You go to your bank and you say, hey, I want to set up my account. And oftentimes, and not to take anything away from Ambrose, my brother and my friend, we're out there in the world, but it's just I have a unique perspective about business finance and lending because every business that I've been a part of has required that I understand how to finance it in order to be successful, because you have to meet payroll and all of those other things. And the businesses that I've been in have typically required long pay cycles. So for example, if I'm dealing with a client in our advertising business, it might take us 6 to 9 months to get paid. But we've spent tons of money in that time. My employees didn't wait 6 to 9 months to get their paychecks. You know, the media that we're buying, we had to do that. So I had to understand how to finance those businesses very early on. And the difference in your business profile versus your corporate profile is that your business credit is going to be driven by having a Dun & Bradstreet profile, which is what we're going to get into, the whole identity of creating this separate set of identity beyond yourself, which in the beginning is really the easiest to start with if it is that you've organized your business appropriately. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so it's not just in your business name, which sometimes the retail bankers will say, okay, I put your name on there, so you've got business credit. The problem is when you go to look on your credit report, those items are listed on your personal credit report, and they're not reporting to business repositories. And the same thing happens if you happen to go in and look for an SBA loan. Unfortunately, those products as well, although they're identified as business products, those products are tied to your personal history. And if you have an SBA loan, which in some instances an SBA loan is a very good tool to use depending upon your business needs, it's not going to help you establish business credit. So I have clients now that have been in business 30 years, and they didn't understand that there was something different to do. So 30 years later, they still don't have business credit. And so that limits a lot of their business opportunities as well. Because a lot of times what happens, just as when you're building your personal credit, once you start establishing credit, what happens? other creditors start extending you credit because they know that you exist. Well, that's the same thing that happens in your business. But if you've never created that business credit, then you never receive those opportunities. So we're going to talk about that tonight. All right. And so the business credit, what's unique about the business credit is no one knows when you start your business, is your business going to be a lifestyle business, or are you building a corporation that's going to be a global conglomerate? Who knows? No one knows in the beginning, right? You putting together your business plans, and depending upon how you execute those business plans, that'll determine how your business continues to grow and scale. So just by establishing your business, no one can say, hey, this won't be the next multi-billion-dollar organization. So the presumption is it probably will be. So let's see what they tell us about this business, and that'll help us determine how we extend credit to that organization. And so it's based on what the business is able to pay, and that's the information that you are providing. Okay. And so why I think business credit is so important for startup is in the beginning, all you're doing is usually paying for supplies and materials. You're paying for logo, you're paying for business cards, you're paying for office equipment, you're paying for office supplies. Those expenses would be a great place to begin with establishing business credit, because they're smaller purchases. Oftentimes you have the cash, but hang on to your cash. You can show that cash in the bank, and now you give that lender some comfort in extending the credit lines necessary to purchase that equipment. And then because you have the resources, you're able to pay those resources back quickly and begin to establish your credit. Yes?
I'm confused. So if I go to the bank and say, I want to establish business credit, what are they going to do? I mean,
The bank is not where you're going to go. So just sit there and listen. The bank is not where you're going to go. I'm going to get you to where you need to go in order to establish the credit. I just use the bank as the example because that's what most people do. You go, hey, I started my business. I worked on this wonderful business plan. So Mr. Banker, I want to establish my business. And you need to have more relationships than one. And so the bank is not going to be the place that we're going for that business credit. Okay? So what you want to do is initially you think of same retail places that you go. We may go to Best Buy, we may go to Amazon, you may Staples, Office Depot, Home Depot, all of these places. But what you want to ask for is, I would like a corporate account. And a lot of times when you go in and you're looking for a corporate account, it's not easily visible, because the difference is corporate accounts are established without a personal guarantee. It's based on the organization. And so there's no guarantee. And I am a organization extending credit, I want to be able to come after someone. So I would prefer to push you to my retail product where I have a guarantee, where you personally are on the hook, as opposed to me extending credit that I really don't have anything in terms of recourse outside of the organization that you've presented as a possibility to go back and get my money if it is that you fail to pay. So that limits the choices. And also the difference when you're setting up business credit that's going to be different than when you're creating your personal credit, because a corporation is perceived to have staff and many people as opposed to an individual. You might apply for a corporate card for Staples, and Staples will give you a $5,000 credit line, versus you apply for Staples as an individual, Staples may give you a $1,000 credit line. And so the distinction is that there's a difference in the numbers that you're afforded, because the perception is that, okay, this is a business, we don't know how many employees are going to be part of this business, but we think it's going to become a large organization, because we have no reason to know otherwise that they're not going to become a large organization. And so as with anything, you have to start at the beginning. So you start off with those small lines once you've established your organization. And the great thing about this is, in this effort of creating new credit for your business, what's different in your corporate credit building process than your personal process is every time as an individual you go to apply for a credit card, credit line, anything. What's the first thing that happens as an individual?
You check your credit.
They check your credit. And what does that do for you as it relates to the repository and your credit score? Yes, it's negative. It's just the opposite when you're applying for corporate credit. When you apply for corporate credit, even if the offeror does not extend the credit, it is not a negative. Actually, it's a positive. Because now someone had to look to verify, oh my goodness, this corporation exists. So the more people begin to inquire about this corporation, they're like, oh, this corporation exists. They're out here doing business. Maybe we should extend their credit. Let's see who's giving them some credit. Oh, okay, maybe we should offer to extend credit as well. We want to give them some credit. So, for example, I had set up a new corporation and I applied for a fleet card. So the first company in, I think they gave us a $5,000 line for a fleet card. That's for all our fuel for our company vehicles. And so I wasn't thinking about it, and I said, well, let's go ahead and apply for another fleet card. No, the second company approached us and said, hey, we want to offer you a fleet card. So because the first company gave us $5,000, the new company gave us $10,000, because they want us to direct our business to the second company as opposed to the first company. So you begin to have those options. And it never hurts because it's not a negative like it would be if this was tied to your personal credit. So the first thing that everyone is looking for when you're establishing your business, which is why it's important in the beginning, before you've done anything, is to make sure that you have established your business in such a way that it looks at it like it's a legitimate business and that it's not a hobby. And so what are some of the things that you think may cause someone to think that your business could be a hobby?
Well,
P.O. box? What else?
I learned that it's small, but the email. 'Cause
Email?
I had something that I just sounded cute, but GoDaddy said I think you should. It costs a little more, but I changed it, and that it makes a difference.
Yes. What else? Yes.
If you don't have a web page.
Yes.
If your name is in the company name?
Here's one more, because a lot of times we're going to get advice. What kind of advice do you think you may have come across that might actually hurt you in business early on? What was your statement?
Tax ID number.
Okay, tax ID number. Okay, so you're almost on it when you talk about the tax. So what I'm alluding to is a lot of times when you're speaking to professionals about your business, you go to your tax professional and they tell you to write everything off and claim a loss.
Is that wrong?
You do that too many times, and guess what? You're not in business. It's a hobby. Because if every time you turn around and you're writing things off, eventually the IRS is going to say, this is a hobby. So we're not going to take it as a business write-off. We're basically going to tax you because it really was a hobby that you've been playing with. So a lot of times, that's the number one mistake. I have people who say, oh, but the tax person told me to just take a loss every year. Well, guess what? If you're taking a loss every year, and I'm sure Amber will be able to speak to this further, if you come in with those tax returns, and again, this is why lenders make you sign a form to allow them to get the tax returns directly from the IRS, because you're not going to switch, you're not going to bait and switch and have another set of tax returns that you show me when you're trying to get money from me than what you've really filed, right? So if you are losing money every year, you are not in business. It's a hobby. It's a hobby.
No, I was just going to add.
Right? Because guess what? We're not going to give you any money if you can't show us how you're going to pay that money back. If you're not making any money, then in the investment world, when we're talking about funding your business, we say the first folks that you go to are the 3 F's: friends, family, and fools. Those are the folks who will fund you if you're not going to make any money. But in the real world, you have to make money. Now, Am I saying that you pay excessive taxes? No, I'm not. But you need to be prudent in terms of understanding business tax strategies that are legitimate, allow you to make money, be profitable as a business, and pay the necessary amount of tax. Not overpay, but the necessary amount, while still demonstrating that you are operating a profitable venture. So that's not today's course, but think about that. All right. In the beginning, your business doesn't have history. So if you go to your good old banker and you say, hey, I'm starting my company, Mr. Banker usually says, come back to me with 3 years of tax returns. SBA even says, prove that you've been able to execute your plans and get to market and show me that you've gotten some market traction before you come to me and ask me for a loan. Well, that's not a problem when you're starting corporate credit. You begin to establish your business based on what you're projecting your business to be able to pay, and so you start to slowly build those credit lines that ultimately you're able to use to help finance some of your early startup expenses. Okay. Numbers. Yes.
I was wondering, since you're starting out and if these companies that you're looking to get these corporate accounts with have the ability to look at your tax returns, but let's say you're starting out, you don't have tax returns, what are the first few companies you would suggest that you get these corporate accounts set up with in order to build your corporate credit?
Absolutely. Excellent question. So the first companies that you're going to pursue, once you pass this business credibility process, so the first thing on the business credibility are things like make sure we have everything in order. So we've got our business name, we've created a legal entity, so we have an LLC or a corporation that we've declared as an S Corp. Again, if you're operating as a DBA initially, and I don't blame anyone for starting off as a DBA because sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. And so rather than immediately having the responsibility for paying the corporate taxes, you may start off with a DBA. But the second that you realize that you're getting market traction, you want to convert that business to a legal entity. Because what is a DBA at the end of the day? Who doing business as? Right. So what happens if you get hit by the bus?
Right.
The business is gone, right? You can't pass it on. You can't leave it to anyone. It's a wrap. It's just you. So that means also that if you're building credit, the reason you're guaranteeing it, because it's just you. You haven't created a separate entity to be able to say that this entity can live beyond my life. It could be sold, it could be traded, it could be whatever. It could be bought, it could be inherited, it could have this life beyond my life. And so once we've done that, established our number, we're not using our cell phones, right? Right, we're not using our cell phones, right? We're using a number that if someone was to look on 411 and see the history of that number is registered to your business, right? Why would that be important?
To substantiate?
Yeah, because you're establishing a credible organization, and even though you might not occupy a brick and mortar space initially, the plan is that you're going to occupy some type of brick and mortar space eventually, right? If that's the nature of your business. Okay. And you can have the number as well as, for some reason, even though these days we're doing digital communications, you still want to have at least an eFax number. Because again, it looks like your business is doing business and you needed to have that second method of communication. Okay. And the reason this is important is because ultimately you want to be able to have your number listed with 411. And so what a lender typically does is they'll do a check. They'll do a reverse check to make sure that the number is associated with your business, and they'll just do a check to make sure that you're listed on 411 and that the information that populates when they call 411 is consistent with the other information that you've put out about your address, your other methods of communication. All of this stuff is saying the same thing. Your website. A lot of times, again, in the beginning, you may not have the fancy bell and whistles. Just at least put your, stamp there, hold in place with some basic information about your business, and it's coming, and you can continue to develop it. But you establish again your identity. And so there's a few options to do inexpensive sites, but make sure that you have secured your URL for your business. And so that's so that you have the ability to have your website. And in the beginning, you can go ahead and set up your initial business email. Because what happens is I've seen people where they have a URL, but they're still using a Gmail email. And I'm a little bit confused. Why are you using Gmail? Gmail has business, so they could host. If you like the way that the platform works, you can have Gmail for Business and have them host your business emails, but have your emails in the name of your organization. And think about it. What are the businesses, who are the businesses that operate within your space? How do those businesses look and feel? If you're operating in a similar space, you want to sort of look and feel like the companies who are occupying the space. And so just kind of think about that. If I'm in real estate business, or if I'm in event planning, or whatever business that I'm in, sort of look at some of the pros in that space and take their presence as a little bit of an identity of how I could identify and set up my organization. Okay. So you're going to get your new EIN, and your EIN is going to be associated to that entity that you have, either your LLC or corporation. You can have a corporation designated as an S Corp, but that EIN is what you're going to use with your entity. Then from there, you're going to have a DUNS number established that connects to that entity. And in establishing that DUNS number, this is where having the address is important. So no PO boxes, no UPS, mailbox, etc. boxes, because guess what? They reverse check those addresses. So that's a red flag immediately if that address pops up as the address that you're using. So your answer is, what do we do if we're not ready to go in and get a huge space? That's where virtual offices are a solution, because a virtual office is located at a commercial location. Virtual offices occupy commercial building spaces. So if someone is reverse checking your address, you're located at a commercial business space like every other business. So the presumption is this is a legitimate business. And so that's an easier way to, again, establish this presence. You want all of those things to be in order before you start with building your corporate credit. So get all those things taken care of first, then get your DUNS number. And when you put your DUNS number in, make sure that all of the information is consistent and it's just the way that you want it, because that's now going to become the record that every potential lender uses to determine if they're going to extend you credit. Yes?
I know I'm just dying here.
No, I see it. I'm like, yes.
Okay, two things. One, it was advised that I do sole proprietorship to start, and then next year, when I get it up and going prayerfully, then I would go to LLC. And then another thing, it was also suggested that I use, I think FedEx, that's because it looks like I have an office address, but I know that it's really a P.O. box, but it says, unit. So that
So who told you that?
I actually studied it. I read it in a book, and
Okay.
then one of my mentors suggested it. So because they said not to do the P.O. box because that's, it doesn't look like you're serious about your business or whatever. But now you're saying this, I'm wondering, I guess you're going to get into the virtual part because I've never.
Yeah, so the reason that you're going to go for virtual places, unfortunately, again, major creditors, major organizations, you don't see a Xerox setting up a branch office using a P.O. box. You know what I'm saying? So when you think about let's kind of think about what is the landscape of how corporations operate, what's their corporate footprint, but you will see a corporation set up a branch office using a virtual office, using a Regis, using a ServPro, using any of
that?
Pardon me?
How do you get that?
Oh, it's
Virtual.
easy. They're online. Google virtual office, you'll find a zillion address. They'll receive your mail. You can have office time if you want. If you don't want, they can receive your mail, answer your phones, but you have a corporate identity. And that's what you want.
Wow.
And it's not the P.O. box. Yes.
What do you say to people who use their name as their company name?
So it depends, because again, I could be a professional, I could be a doctor, for example, and my business is in my name, and I have licenses that's associated with that name. And so what happens oftentimes is, dependent upon your professional reason for using your name, if it's something where your license is tied to your name, that's a lifestyle business, because you couldn't pass it on to the next person. The next person would have to earn their own license. So I think what you do in the beginning, I will say, let's think about your business. What are you looking to do, and what's your exit strategy? Is this a business that you're creating that you want to scale and to be able to exit and sell? If that's the case, then it's going to be more important to build a brand. You don't want to sell an entity that has your name on it, unless there's some reason that you have to put your name on it. When I did the joint venture with my advertising agency, I didn't want to use my name on that entity. But when we did a market study, what we discovered was, because I had another business, my name had a certain equity associated to it. So in that case, it made sense to use my name. But in honesty, I didn't want to use my name, because I said, what if this doesn't work? I don't want to have my name out there, associated with that business. So just think about that. What are you looking to do? How do you want that to scale? Do you want somebody to buy a business with your name on it? And you can't do anything about that, because that's how it was branded, and that's the value associated with the business. Okay. All right. So when you're building this initial corporate credit, back to your question, we're going to start with, let's see if we can get some samples of some other companies, but you're going to start with things like your Quill, your Staples, your Home Depot. You're going to start with all your easy accounts to get, your low-hanging fruit. Sometimes you may even put a secured account in your corporation's name, a secured Visa with some of the lenders. Go ahead and get that in your corporation's name, because what that's going to do is, again, something that's going to allow you to make purchases that will report to Dun & Bradstreet. That's what you're looking for. What's going to report? Who are reporters that will report to Dun & Bradstreet? That's what we want. Okay. And so initially, they say, well, okay, start to get your first 5 to 10. When I'm working with companies, so we're going to try to get our first 10 to 15 accounts, because once we have accounts showing up on our Dun & Bradstreet that are reporting, the more accounts we have, the more credible our organization begins to appear. So when you think of a company like a Walmart, multi-billion-dollar organization, I think they have 518 accounts on their Dun & Bradstreet. And you say, well, they're publicly, yeah, they use credit as well, everybody, because what's the name of the game? How do we keep our business going and floating? Is cash is king. So the name of the game is to hold onto your cash as long as you can for as many cycles, so that you can generate revenues off of that cash, and so you're leveraging everything else that you can get. So I had a client that raised $10 million to launch their firm. But because they raised the $10 million, every time they did a drawdown is when that triggered the cost for that money. So they didn't draw down $10 million at one time because they couldn't service that debt. What they did was they had the $10 million commitment, and then they went out and started building their corporate credit. So they got corporate American Express, corporate Visas, and so we were in the real estate development space. And so what they would use is they had 0 interest rate on those credit cards for the first year or two. So we'd go out and spend $250,000 in permits and fees, necessary things that we had to do in order to get to a point where we can get to development, but we would leverage them, run them up, then pay them all off at one draw from the hedge money, and then go back out and use the credit cards, and it kept extending that money an extra 60 to 90 days. And so it was a way to minimize the cost of the capital to get closer to a point where we would have permits so that we could actually get construction financing, which would be cheaper than any of those other sources of financing. And so when you're building your business, the name of the game is understanding what capital can I get and how can I ultimately get it at the lowest cost to my business. And so it's an ongoing dance. You know, I always tell people, if you're the CEO of your business, your job is to set the vision and find the resources. Find the resources to execute that vision for the business. Okay. All right. Building up. You're going to build up by developing this trade credit, and the trade credit is going to help you build up other levels of credit. So typically what happens, you start off with vendor credit, your small accounts. Your vendor credit can be something as simple as you did business with your CPA said, oh, you spent $5,000. If that CPA is willing to allow that to be reported to Dun & Bradstreet, your CPA can become one of your listed reporters to Dun & Bradstreet. So you have your initial accounts, you then go for your fleet accounts. After you get your fleet accounts, those are your fuel accounts, then you move into the category of beginning to get your, what we call your cash accounts. So those are the visas that typically, again, for the organization, if you got it individually, it might be $1,000, $5,000. For your business, it might be $25,000 because the difference in what's perceived to be the type of business. And then also the industry and sector. You know, beware of the business that you're in and also the numbers that you're using as your projections, making sure that they're consistent with industry standards. So don't say that, hey, I'm doing face painting, but then we're making $10 million. It's like, that wouldn't be consistent. You know, that there's a little red flag that will be raised there. Okay, so here's, again, some of those examples of those early Uline, Quill, Wells Fargo Secured, some of those initial accounts that you might establish. Amazon, Office Depot, Best Buy. I think even PayPal has been offering some kind of business, something people are telling me about PayPal loans or PayPal moving into the business space. Again, your interest is, can I use my Dun & Bradstreet number and will they report to Dun & Bradstreet? Because if they're not going to report to Dun & Bradstreet, then they're going to create a traditional hit on your personal credit, and that's not really what you want, unless it's absolutely essential. There are some things that it might be essential that you have no choice but to be a personal guarantee. You're asking for a $250,000 loan or $500,000 loan from, you know, the SBA or a lender. Yeah, they're going to want you to personally guarantee that initially. And then as soon as you can refinance it out of a personal guarantee, then that's what you want to do. Yes?
By fleet credit, do you mean like a company car?
Yes, you can get your company vehicles, absolutely. Company vehicles, maintenance of your company vehicles, fuel for your company vehicles.
That would be like an installment loan on your corporate
Yes,
credit.
it could end up being installment, or it could be, you know, credit cards that you're using just for the maintenance of your fleet of vehicles as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Will the fleet cards be best thing to use for like if I do a food truck?
Yes. Yes. And if you're trying to do a food truck, see me after class. Abba Feinkel builds them. So yes, and they finance them. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Hey, we're good. Okay. All right. I want to get through this quickly so that Amber can get up here. All right. I think I've kind of touched on all of the. Yeah, I did. Okay. Very good. So I will leave you with. Are there any last quick questions? So that yes, Amber.
It kind of seems like if you don't have that virtual office, that you probably shouldn't even try to do something through Dun & Bradstreet.
Not yet. I would suggest if you don't have the physical office and kind of that business checklist, the basics, so what do we say? We want to have our address, we want to have our phone number, our email address, a web presence, we want to be listed on 411. Yeah, I want to have all those things in place first. Then I want to go ahead and get my Dun & Bradstreet number, because then I'll populate with all of that information, and now I'm going to be off to the races.
Okay.
We don't want to create any red flags where we don't have to.
Okay.
All right? Any other last questions? No?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you suggest to get the corporate cards from the stores? I kind of have a lot of transactions.
No worries. So you're going to look at business. So all of the many of the same organizations that you're doing business with as an individual, you're probably going to want to do business with as a corporation. And so those are the accounts that you want to set up from a corporation standpoint as opposed to an individual. So sometimes I notice now, because everything is online. So in the good old days, the way I used to create corporate credit for my accounts, Remember that little 9-year-old girl that was creating her fake credit cards? So you had paper applications. So I would have a stack of applications, and every time I created a new entity, I would go ahead and set up the applications for the new entity. Well, everything's online now. So online, they trick you to try to get you to put in your social security number. So I don't do them online. I end up having to call the headquarters and say, okay, our corporation, we need to set up a corporate account. Send us over the information, and then I write my Dun & Bradstreet number on there, and all the other business information, no social security number.
Okay, well, I'm in real estate.
Okay.
So how would the,
Home Depot is one of the best
Yes,
ones you can set up.
exactly. You need to get Home Depot yesterday. Exactly. And people doing fix and flips. Home Depot has great,
They
3
have a
different
great
corporate
virtual
credit accounts for real estate investors. Yeah. Yeah, I'm in real estate.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
No, it's not sorry.
So, I guess I'm still on the credit. I just view this as being something very interesting. But just like you were telling the young lady about the, I think she was asking me about a credit card. It's the same principle, right? You still need to have your virtual office.
Yes, you want to have all of your business
So don't
identity
even
clear.
go there.
Because then you have to try to undo it, or you have to explain it, or you have a red flag on your account, and you're not able to recognize why someone is turning your business down.
I wish I had talked to you, because that costs $350 to have that.
Yeah.
You can still have a
Yeah,
PO box to
yeah,
take your mail or
yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that. You can
yeah,
list that.
yeah.
But for example, even if you're doing business with the government, they won't accept a PO box as your
Exactly.
address.
Yeah.
You have to have they check it. I've
Yeah.
tried, believe me. They check it. And they're
Right.
like, no, this is not an address that we can visit and
Yeah.
see that you're doing business here.
Right.
So even if it's your home address, it's gotta be a hard address.
Yeah.
And you set up an office
Yeah.
in your home, a space, a corner, in the
But
desk.
even in this case, I'm saying it's better not to even use your
Oh,
home
I wouldn't
for
do
this
that, yeah.
because, again, with that personal guarantee thing, guess what? If you told me to come to your house and now I have your house address,
Yes,
guess what?
no.
You just personally guaranteed your loan, because
Yeah.
if you default, I'm coming after that house that I know you have that you just brought me to, right? So again, you want to have a separate identity for your organization.
That was another question I was gonna ask you about the sole proprietorship. Do you think that that's a good idea? Because I did that first, because it's cheaper. And then because LLC.
So we can go over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
differences
it sounds
with you,
like-
because
yeah.
you missed the first class.
Right.
So
No,
you
it's
need
okay.
to talk to Lauren.
Yeah, it's okay. It's again dealing with how you plan to grow and scale your business. And again, Ambro will go into greater detail as it relates to the lending requirements, and I'm sure he'll kind of touch on and extend some of these things that I've touched on for the corporate credit. Yes.
In building your corporate credit, you mentioned that inquiries work the opposite way in your favor.
Yes.
So is there anything else that works opposite, like when you have high open lines of credit, or if you have a lot of credit cards, or just low lines? Like, how does it?
It absolutely all works different.
Yeah.
The more credit you have as a business, the more credit that is extended to you. Because the presumption is, especially if you're paying it on time, right? So if you're managing the credit, then the presumption is that you can handle the credit, and guess what, we can make some money off of you. Because if I'm extending you credit, I'm not doing it for my help. I'm in the business to make money. So if I'm able to charge you an interest rate, I'm making money. And if you're paying on that debt, then you're someone that I want to do business with. Yes. Yes.
So, if I've got all the ducks in order, I've got the virtual address, I've got the phone number, all of that stuff, then I call Home Depot, Staples.
So we're gonna,
say,
after you set up your Dun & Bradstreet, yes.
so
Yeah.
setting up the Dun & Bradstreet is the.
Yes, and it's free. You just request the Dun & Bradstreet number, and you put in all of your information, and so that's why you want all of your information to be the same set of information that you're gonna consistently use. And one of the things I forgot to mention, if you have an office in a city and you're doing business in that city, you need to have a business license. So make sure that you have also the licenses that are relevant for your business. Because again, somebody's searching you and you have one thing but you don't have a business license, then it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. If you're in business, you have a business license. So, make sure those things are consistent. So I had someone who set up an office in Beverly Hills. but lives in LA, and she was like, well, what should I do? So you gotta go get a Beverly Hills business license. Your business is in Beverly Hills, so you need to get a business license in Beverly Hills. And if you're doing business in LA, LA will require that you have a license in LA for the business that you're doing with LA as well. So you may have to have licenses in multiple cities depending upon what business you're doing. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, if you establish corporate credit in your current business name and you want to open up another business, can you use that corporate business credit for that second business?
What is the legal structure of the primary entity that already has corporate credit?
Just a clothing store.
How is it structured? Is it
LLC.
It's a LLC. So potentially you can have a subsidiary. If the new entity is going to be a subsidiary under that LLC, then yes.
Okay.
If you're doing something totally different, then no. You probably need to go ahead and start over.
Gotcha.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all so much.